movie. I watched the Tetris movie. And let me tell you something. Tetris movie got a 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb, 82 on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 59 on Metacritic, which means, you know, good movie. And by God, was it a good movie? It actually was a good fucking movie. Here is why. Is there a lot of Red Scare propaganda baked into it? Of course. I think it's literally illegal in Hollywood to make a movie that mentions the USSR without like literally being like, it's the worst place on the planet. They kill you all the time. They kill you after you're dead. And they are the fucking worst. Just the worst. Yeah, like, if you try to do a fucking movie about it, they'll shoot you. Okay, they're where you try to showcase any part of the USSR in a positive light, they'll fucking kill you. I think. I don't know. They might as well be making you forcibly create a historical narratives at gunpoint because holy fuck. Anyway, so. Why do I think it's a good movie regardless? Well, I think that it's not as much Red Scare as I thought it was going to be, even though there are components where people are like, finally, we're liberating ourselves from the USSR. Like, surely nothing awful will happen immediately in the dissolution, in the aftermath of the dissolution, like child prostitution rates skyrocketing or people committing suicide by such fucking margins that like life expectancy diminishes, collapses in its entirety. You know, none of that will happen. Everyone is just very excited for the prospect of capitalist democracy. Like they have a bunch of that. However, knowing the full detailed account of what actually happened in the real world throughout history with respect to the development of Tetris and what came about, I think that they did a pretty good job of describing the story with a fuckload of stupid Hollywood seasoning. What do I mean by this? The internal conflict between the KGB member who is like heading commerce versus the actual dude that was still like more focused on doing what's best for the USSR is very real. The story about Elorg is real. That part is actually true. The story that I think shows Robert Maxwell, a con man, a charlatan, and a spy, and his son, a annoying beneficiary of intergenerational wealth, also very cool and very good. And ultimately, despite the fact that they whitewashed the fucking main character like a motherfucker, even though I do like this actor. He's, Steve Taggart or whatever. I'm actually a fan of this guy. He's a great actor, even though he is not white in the real world, for the record. Yeah, Taron Egerton, yeah. Anyway, like, you want to know what this dude looks like in the real world, bro? Hold on. Insane that they did that, okay? No, he's just like straight up not a white dude. Like, he's not just tan, guys. Like, he's just like straight up, he's like Dutch, and I think like, what is he like? He's like Indonesian or something. Like, he's not like a tan white guy. They literally made him out to be just a white dude from Texas, which is pretty funny. TikTok will look at him and be like, no, he's not even white passing, he's white. But, you know, TikTok is insane. Anyway, so the true story of Tetris, as we've covered on this broadcast before, revolves around Alexey Pajitnov, who makes this fucking wonderful video game for funsies, and the mass distribution of it, and then also the illegal, even by capitalist standards, IP ping pong, as I like to call it, with like 17 different mediators basically are fighting over patents or fighting over distribution rights over a game that like the USSR never actually fully gave to any of these fucking parties. So I think that's not what whitewashing means, my guy. They whitewashed him, huh? Why Hollywood weird guy? I mean, whitewashing can be used as a double entendre in this circumstance. It has multiple meanings, but yes, taking like an Indonesian Dutch dude and then turning him into like a white guy that is like from Texas is adequate. To use the term whitewashing here is adequate. Like you can whitewash war crimes and make it seem like it's different. Make it seem like it's like much nicer than what the truth actually was. Or you can whitewash a Dutch Indonesian guy. Anyway, that part is not that important. He isn't from Texas in the story, though. You were just saying things, bro. He even says he's Dutch Indonesian and grew up in New York. Oh, my God, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm saying he looks like a white guy from Texas, dumbass. Even though I think he's British, which makes it even worse. The actor. Red baiting better describes the script of the film. In my opinion, it was literally written by Apple. No, there is a red baiting component in it for sure. First of all, they show the dissolution of the USSR or the lead up to it under Gorbachev as devastating, which by many respects it was. They also greatly overemphasize how much the KGB was like pursuing these guys and all the different attempts that they engaged in to like blackmail, to fucking even try and actually kill him, blah, blah, blah. A lot of that stuff is not real. Okay? There was no high-speed car chase throughout the fucking streets of Moscow between the KGB and the guy who is a fucking, coder nerd driving a fucking Lada. Okay? All that shit is made up, obviously. Just like they absolutely hyper-focus on perhaps the most boring part of the fucking story, which is the back and forth IP ping pong that Elorg, the Hungarian Robert Stein, right? Isn't he Hungarian? The Hungarian Robert Stein, and which is like basically the guy who takes stuff from the USSR and presents it to the rest of the world, and Robert Maxwell, and also Henk Rogers. Are you telling me that every historically accurate movie that action parts, scenes that were fake parts? Yeah. So the what is this? Tetris 2023 versus the real story? I'll just say it like this. Parts of it that I actually thought looked like fucking red baiting that actually wasn't. Are you ready for this? Western oligarchs' involvement with Gorbachev, like Robert Maxwell's relationship with Gorbachev, okay? Consistently saying, no, Gorbachev is our friend. Western capitalists trying to utilize the no monetary compensation concept when they're engaging in dealings with the USSR. That part is real, okay? The internal conflict amongst those who are party loyalists versus like USSR loyalists versus people who recognized that the downfall was inevitable and wanted to absolutely do everything they can to make out like bandits and become oligarchs. Vladimir Putin is literally this guy in the fucking movie, okay? Not like exactly the same, not in that exact same situation, but like every single person that inevitably ended up owning Gazprom and all of these oligarchs in Russia are this guy. So that part was actually very historically accurate, even though I don't know what the fuck happened to this guy in the real world. So I don't really know I don't know what like this guy did. Him getting arrested in the end is also bullshit, I'm pretty sure. But the the picking apart of all of the wealth of the USSR by Western bankers collaborating with like, you know, KGB members or people involved in commerce in any capacity, like internally. Like, that shit was real. Okay? That is a real experience that actually played a significant role in what inevitably became the oligopoly, the oligarchy that is Russia, okay? Modern Russia. So that part, even if this person isn't real, and he certainly did not get fucking arrested, let's be real, especially under Gorbachev, come on now, because that's what happens in the end of the movie, is they have to tie it on with a Hollywood seasoning. You know, that part is actually very real. There was a lot of internal struggle by people who knew that they had power, knew that the USSR was like literally fucking about to implode, and was doing everything they can to personally accrue as much wealth as possible. So that part I thought was not as red baiting as I thought it was going to be, and was genuinely good. But here, let's watch it real quick. Let's watch the trailer. This is so classic, like teenagers in the USSR listening to Western rock music, which was otherwise considered counter-revolutionary and illegal, while they pontificate on what it would be like if they were liberalized, you know, if their markets were liberalized, if their markets were democratized, because that's what they used to call it back in the day, and they still do. If you go to college and you learn about USSR dissolution, post-USSR, they call it the democratization of markets. The denim, well, there's truth to the denim part. That's like not even all that fake, but anyway.
Everybody knows the words. Good ideas have no borders.
Good ideas have no borders.
Don't sing. No. Come on, please. I don't sing, no. We'll never be the same again. It's the final countdown. The final
What the fuck? That's what the fuck? The KGB turned off my access to this video, I guess. Anyway, doesn't matter. Good movie overall. I think you guys will appreciate it. I mean, the red baity propaganda side of it is bad, but ultimately, I do think that Henk Rogers is a good guy, and I think that they show that. I think he's a good guy, and obviously Alexey Pajitnov is a great guy, and they do show that. They show that because look, in reality, what happened in that story is, unironically, there were a couple really good dudes that stood by and stood against, I would say, psychotic, vulturous, predatory Western capitalists, and also the internal conflict that they were engaging in throughout as the USSR was like falling apart all around. There were guys. The Elorg guy was a good dude. That's real. I don't know how much, like, I know that they didn't like actually sneak a contract to Henk Rogers like they claimed they did in the movie, but I do know that they actually changed the contract originally and made it so that Robert Stein didn't actually have the rights that he was selling over to Robert Maxwell. So it's a complex story, and I think that they portray the real villains as the real villains, with the exception of like Western capitalists. They do make like Nintendo seem cool and good. But even then, they actually fucking shit on Nintendo a little bit too. It was good. It was good. They very clearly show Robert Maxwell as a fucking a piece of shit. They show Robert Maxwell's son as a piece of shit. They don't go too deep into, you know, how Robert Maxwell is Ghislaine Maxwell's father, but they did give it to Hank. Don't you remember watching the documentary? No. They did. I'm saying that Henk Rogers in the real world is a good person. Like, he actually very literally stood by Alexey Pajitnov and wanted to make sure that he actually got the proper IP rights and proper compensation for his product that he had created. He did that. That is a real thing that happened in the real world. That's why they're still fucking besties. And that's why they both live in San Francisco together and own Tetris together. So, like, that part is real. And I think that they reflect that very well in the story. He's a bro, and I like seeing that. Yeah, I think they showcased that very well. When I say, wait, no. It's not like besties in air quotes. They literally are. What the fuck? Like, as much as I hate to hand it to the American guy in this circumstance, yes, the American guy, or they live in Hawaii, I think, or one of them lives in Hawaii, the other one lives in San Francisco. No. Yeah, Henk Rogers actually did everything he could to make sure that Alexey Pajitnov was well compensated for his own IP. And that's not a normal situation. Significantly better off than like most other circumstances where like I think any other person would have just fucked him over and not even had a single fucking care about them. Oh, here, this is them. This is them in the real world.
People will take away from this is that friendship trumps ideology and countries. So our friendship, basically countries can fall and rise and all kinds of things, and we are still friends, no matter what happens in our respective countries.
I loved Tetris, literally everything about it.
Yeah. His daughter is now the CEO. Henk Rogers' daughter. Right? It's disgustingly wholesome? No, it is. It is wholesome. It is definitely wholesome. Common American capitalist W? No, extremely, insanely rare American capitalist W. And it literally doesn't even have anything to do with capitalism, as he also perfectly described. It had absolutely more to do with him being like, no, I see a fellow coder. I really like him. I'm going to fucking make sure that he gets his due. But yeah. Yeah, one guy in a sea of capitalists fighting over ownership for decades. And ultimately, it's a positive story. Ultimately, it's a positive story because he does end up getting it. Like, he does. Elorg ends up giving him the, I think, 51% ownership. Him and Henk Rogers own Tetris. So, there is a good end to that story. And I like it. The movie is not as bad as you would expect it to be. Especially because the main villain is not like this big, bad, scary USSR. Even though there are plenty of components that, you get the regular red baiting shit. But the main villain in the movie is like a real villain in the real world. It's not a real person in the movie. But there are plenty of people like that guy that ended up becoming the oligarchs that control Russia alongside Vladimir Putin. So that part and Robert Maxwell's personal connection to people like that, I think reflects the reality of history. I think that they did a good job. Anyway. Tetris versus
Endless
the real
video
story.
game adaptations comes the true story of one of the world's best-selling video games. Apple's Tetris takes us on a wild journey following the guy who played Elton John into the depths of Soviet Russia. So in this video we'll be separating fact from fiction and comparing the movie and its characters to what really happened. So grab some vodka and let me blow your cartridge because this is one wild ride. Meet Henk Rogers, the owner of Bulletproof Software, who discovered Tetris at the 1988 Winter Consumer Electronics Expo in Las Vegas.
After this, I will look at the Barbie. Dude, shut the fuck up. After this, I will look at the stupid fucking Barbie trailer. Oh my God. Just hold on.
Nevada. After playing, he was immediately hooked and was put in contact with its exhibitor, Britain's Maxwell Communications. This is where Robert Maxwell comes in, the company's founder and chairman, who also happens to be the father of infamous child abuser Ghislaine Maxwell. So basically a family of upstanding citizens. You'll notice some of the characters, including Russian leader Mikhail Gorbachev, refer to him as a politician. That's because Robert Maxwell was a member of British Parliament from 1964 to 1970. Some of the more confusing aspects of the Tetris movie is who owned the rights to the game, what
Yeah, he was more than just a politician. He was also a spy. Anyway, but that's, I guess, not a separate story. This is the story. Dua Lipa's and Barbie. Remember when I said, you know, I'm finalizing getting a puppy and it's making me feel so good that it's like I'm letting chat's annoyance like wash over me. It's becoming increasingly more and more difficult to just fucking let it slide. I am having such a hard time. I'm not gonna lie. You guys did it. You did it. You are succeeding.
what those rights entail, and how all this worked during the backdrop of the Cold War. The game was created by Alexey Pajitnov in 1984 when he was working at the Soviet Academy of Science in Moscow. During this time, with rare exceptions, intellectual property was owned by the state and not the individual, so the rights for the game were transferred to a state-run organization called Elektronorgtechnika, or ELORG for short. This was the organization responsible for managing computer software exports from the Soviet Union. In comes Robert Stein. Think of this guy like a video game leech. He'd travel all over the USSR looking for good games, purchase the rights from ELORG, and then resell those rights to distributors across the globe. Now, when you buy these rights, you can choose to purchase them for a specific platform, such as a computer, an arcade, or a console like the NES. Where things get hairy is the introduction of the Game Boy, which, under the wording of ELORG's contract with Mr. Stein, doesn't technically qualify as a PC, console, or arcade. It's in its own category called handheld, which we'll get into in a bit. Second, Mr. Stein greatly misinterpreted ELORG's contract, thinking that his right to distribute Tetris on, quote, different types of computers included home consoles. So ELORG gives a 10-year worldwide PC Tetris license to Robert Stein, who then sublicenses it to Mirrorsoft, run by Kevin and Robert Maxwell. Mirrorsoft then sublicenses that to Atari for US distribution and Henk Rogers for Japanese distribution. So you can already see how things are starting to get confusing. But when Henk goes to ELORG showing off a copy of a Japanese console version of Tetris, director Nikolai Belikov is perplexed. ELORG never gave anyone the Tetris rights to consoles, only PC and arcade. This goes back to Mr. Stein's misinterpretation of their contract, and later Stein will sign an amended
Misinterpretation. Simply a misinterpretation, you know.
agreement clarifying that consoles such as Famicom and NES are different from PCs. So in the late 1980s, when Henk was selling Tetris on Famicoms in Japan, they too were technically illegal copies. But there was a bigger problem. Initial sales of Tetris in Japan were weak at best, so Henk goes to president of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi, to see if they can be of any help. Henk and Hiroshi knew each other after Nintendo helped develop his Go video game, the same game we see him trying to hawk at the beginning beginning of the movie. Because of their history, Hiroshi gives Tetris to a game designer by the name of Shigeru Miyamoto. Yes, the Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of Mario and Zelda. Shigeru loved the game so much, and Nintendo ends up releasing Tetris on the Famicom in 1988, where it quickly becomes the console's best-selling game of all time. Now here is where things get even.
So, yeah, there is so much back and forth, like international patent, IP, distribution rights, ping pong in this entire fucking process in the real world as well, as they are correctly pointing out. I think one of the funnier aspects is that if Nintendo was not involved in this process, I think the U.S. courts would have fucking allowed Sega to just like run train on that IP without giving anybody money, really. I don't even know how the fuck Sega got the rights. I'm pretty sure they just literally didn't even buy them at all. They just basically decided to fucking run with it, like, and sell it.
And more crazy, Henk is invited to meet Minoru Arakawa, the president of Nintendo America, and get a glimpse of their new Game Boy handheld console. At the time, Nintendo wasn't sure which game they should package with Game Boy, and it was actually Henk who suggested Tetris. Even the line from the movie where he says, if you include Mario, the Game Boy will be for little boys, but if you include Tetris, the game will be for everybody, is said to be almost word for word. Henk goes to Mr. Stein to obtain the worldwide handheld rights, but soon finds out that Stein doesn't have them, resulting in, and yes, this is true, Henk, Kevin Maxwell, and Mr. Stein descending upon Moscow all at the same time to sort this fiasco out. A fiasco which has millions at stake. Now, Henk did hire a translator and, against protocol, went to Elorg to ask for a meeting and only got one because Belikov was curious and having another bidder would only sweeten the pot. Unlike the movie, however, was this translator Sasha, who was a KGB spy. That never happened, nor his wife Akemi being threatened at their office in Japan. All of that was added for extra drama. While the movie suggests Belikov was roughed up by the KGB, all we really know is that he was closely kept an eye on by Soviet authorities and even had his files reviewed. Gorbachev did keep an eye on Belikov's negotiations, but as the film lays out, the General Secretary of the Communist Party was too busy keeping his country together to worry about the sale of a video game. Now, the film highly dramatizes this race against time as the various parties fight to gain their rights, but in reality it was a far more civil matter. Elorg chose the company that was willing to pay the most, and yes, Kevin Maxwell tried to offer them encyclopedias in exchange for the game, thinking the Russians weren't interested in money, but rather an exchange of intellectual properties. Alas, there was no KGB officer by the name of Valentin Trifonov who attempted to extort Robert Maxwell in exchange for the Tetris rights. Rather, his character is more a metaphor for the greed and corruption that bloated the Soviet Union at the time.
And I do think that this was, well, first of all, that's an interesting analysis. I do agree that this metaphor is correct. It's just like in collaboration. No, that's not the Red Scare. No, guys, these motherfuckers literally exist. They're still in power. Like, what do you mean? Vladimir Putin is this guy, okay? Vladimir Putin is literally this guy. Like, there are many guys like this guy. They all own the fucking... You're so wrong. Okay, shut up, Altbeam. I hate this chat so much right now. I haven't talked about the Clarence Thomas thing yet. Like, current present Russian oligarchs that control almost all of the industry are guys that were, people that rose through the ranks of the party and basically sold off the wealth of the USSR piece by piece to Western bankers and Western capitalists and Western oligarchs. They did that. So that metaphor is technically correct. That metaphor is not wrong. Okay? So understand that. There's no distinction between this guy and the larger Soviet Union. He's meant to represent communism. That's all I'm saying. It's true that the collapse involved despotic crooks stripping the USSR piece by piece. No. You missed the other part. The Elorg guy, I think they even make Gorbachev look good in this, which I don't even agree with, first of all. They present this guy as a dude that's like somehow worse than Gorbachev when he was like basically doing everything under the behest of Gorbachev. If it was more historically accurate, it would be conducted under the reign and under the watchful eyes of that of the administration at the time. So the Elorg guy, who legitimately did change the contracts out to fuck over Robert Maxwell and Robert Stein, that guy is a real dude. I forget what his name is. Okay? I don't remember what his name is, but that's a real dude that worked at Elorg at the time, and he did end up defending like USSR's best interests, and even Alexey and Henk Rogers. That part is actually real. So I think that they showcase that very well. They showcase that distinction very well.
Time. So not only did Henk Rogers leave the USSR with the handheld rights for Nintendo, but because of the misunderstanding over the definition of what a computer is, he also got Nintendo the console rights, which led to a legal dispute with Atari, who at the time was publishing Tetris on their consoles. This would later be resolved in court in Nintendo's favor. The film also depicts a budding friendship.
Why is chat extra feral today? Did something happen? Like, I can't help but notice that, like, chat's being, like, extra weird today. I don't know what it is. They always attack you, man. Is it the way I don't know if it's the way I'm receiving it, whereas normally I would just, like, let it wash over and just not focus on it, but I don't know what the fuck it is. Like, a lot of you motherfuckers are like rabid dogs in the chat currently, and I don't know what the fuck that's about. It's like extra stinky.
Between Henk and Tetris's creator, Alexey, which is true to real life. The two hung out, and Alexey even took him out drinking and gave him a tour of Moscow. For 13 years after its creation, Alexey didn't receive a cent for his work on Tetris. It was only until Elorg became a private company and the Tetris rights expired that Henk and Alexey joined together to buy 50% of the Tetris rights, with Nikolai Belikov purchasing the other 50%. Then, 10 years later, in 2005, Belikov would sell his half, giving Henk and Alexey full ownership of the game. The film also shows Alexey and his family moving to America, which is true. Henk helped Alexey immigrate to Seattle in 1991, where he later founded his own software company called Animatech. A happy ending, however, cannot be said for all our characters. Robert Maxwell, while on trial for stealing hundreds of millions from his company's pension funds, mysteriously died after years.
Yeah, did he fall? Did he jump? I wonder what happened to Robert Maxwell. How did he die? I'm going to make a lock right now. I don't know if this is a cliche already. Here's my lock. The Barbie movie is Joker for homosexuals. And you are just as fucking unbearable as the straight white dudes that love Joker. Okay? The Barbie movie and its reception is literally just the Joker. What Joker is to straight white guys, the Barbie movie is to women and the gays. Just as unbearable.
urinating off the side of his yacht, falling into the water, experiencing a heart attack, and drowning. Although some have speculated this could have been suicide or he was offed by international assassins. As stated in the film, Henk's daughter Maya, who we see throughout the story, became CEO of Tetris Company, while Henk has focused much of his time on several community and sustainability-oriented organizations. So while Tetris may not be 100% true to life, for a story that mostly deals with contracts, it found a way to be pretty entertaining. I hope you enjoyed this video and will consider